strong features and something very positive there, and even beautiful, we can say, and humanistic. But it couldn't explain, for example, the sexual perversions, for example, or homosexualism, for example. It just for Marxists, this was something um, unexplainable. Also, with Marxists, there was a mystery of a kind, which I just tried to understand and couldn't. For example, this is a principle of so-called historical materialism, that man's ideology is formed by the class to whom he belongs. So if you are capitalist, your thinking is prompted or modeled by your capitalist sort of uh, how to say genesis or uh, um, class mentality, you see. So only proletarians who work and who are exploited, they have their proletarian mentality, proletarian thinking. So they can develop communist ideas because they understand what it is to be exploited, what it is inequality, what is alienation from your labor. So the capitalist himself cannot come to these ideas. But what happened in reality? You know that the close collaborator of Karl Marx, Friedrich Engels, was himself a capitalist and a son of a capitalist. And he came to Manchester to sort of, how to say, um, revise or make a revision of or just inspect the factories belonging to his father. His father was a big capitalist of German descent, but he also possessed some share in the factories which were situated in England. So he sent his son, Friedrich Engels, to inspect these factories. And there Engels was like converted to socialism. He saw the inhuman conditions in which these workers were kept, and he wrote the book about the conditions of the working class in England. So this cannot be explained at all by Marxism itself, because how can a son of a fabricant or a capitalist gain a new kind of mentality? What was that conversion? Well, it can be explained, say, by Christianity. Well, St. Augustine underwent conversion because he rethought his whole life. But what was the source of the conversion of Engels? So was it mystical experience? Was it perhaps kind of the outburst of empathy? So this need psychological explanation, and Marxists couldn't provide it. So they preferred to keep silence about this sudden conversion of the capitalist son to proletarian ideology. Okay, so you know that Friedrich Engels is one of the co-authors of the authors of the so-called Communist Manifesto. So he stands at the cradle of this communist movement. Well, and we can say Marxists couldn't explain it because that was kind of a mystery for them. But for Freud, there was nothing uh, strange or inexplicable in this sudden conversion, which Freudians will take in double commas. Why? Because you know that the core of hardcore of Freudian concept is Oedipus complex. Oedipus complex is twofold. It one part is a deep sexual in its origin affection between a son and a mother, and another is also deep jealousy. Yes, auxiliary hypothesis to protect the hardcore. So for Freud, for example, this auxiliary hypothesis is the hypothesis of uh, um, uh, he call it repression. Repression. You see, uh, repression. So you repress or censor your thoughts or your emotions. Repression or censorship. You see, censorship. So these two additional hypotheses, auxiliary hypotheses, can protect the hardcore of Freudian psychoanalysis. You see, if you object that you don't feel this or that emotion towards your mother, Freud can say, well, you repressed it, you censored it. It is somewhere in your subconsciousness. You don't realize it because it's too harmful for you. You understand? So this is auxiliary hypothesis. But now return to Engels. So there is a second part of Oedipus complex, which is jealousy and even hatred to one's father. So between son and father, there's not always just like cloudless love and understanding, but there can be competition for the heart of mother, because a son wants mother all to himself, and he is jealous of father because he understands that father also has some heart, the of his mother. So this jealousy is very important, and it can lead to spoiling relations between father and the son. So there's nothing strange that Engels uh, uh, sort of hated subconsciously, perhaps, his father, and that's why he um, sort of invented the ideology in which proletariat will be the will bury or will sort of kill somehow the bourgeoisie. So here is symbolic killing of one's father, not just Engels just took a axe and killed his father literally. No, perhaps in relations with his father he was gentle and obedient and polite, but he invented a kind of ideology in which his father was condemned to death because the proletarians will uh, somehow dethrone bourgeoisie. Okay, well, it is called, these people who dig the graves, grave diggers. Okay, you understand, grave diggers, angels here. So in manifesto it is written that proletarians are digger grave diggers. They dig the grave for bourgeoisie. Okay, the so for whom? For bourgeoisie. That means for Engels's father. So Engels didn't pity his father. He didn't want to protect him and say, oh, those hated proletarians, they somehow are a kind of a uh, danger for my father. So I want to protect my father against those dangerous people, these proletarians who want to kill my father. I will protect him. I will be a capitalist. I will mobilize police and the government forces just to protect my father and me and my factory and my incomes. So this will be the logical idea. But for Freud, there's nothing logical here because secretly he hates his father. He's jealous of his father, and he symbolically kills his father by his proletarian ideology. So in ideological disputation, he stands on the position of proletarians. Well, it is interesting also, I cannot solve this because I don't have enough documents, how Engels' father reacted on these ideas of his son. Maybe he read this manifesto because it was signed by two men, by Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels. So what did his father think about that? Maybe he thought that it was just a joke. He didn't take it seriously because, well, officially Engels did not tear relations with his father. He continued to be an obedient son, and his father gave him part of the income. And with that income, he could support Karl Marx because Karl Marx was penniless in London. He didn't have any income of his own. So Engels just was a Mecenas, or he supported Marx by financially. By what? Because Engels was also, he didn't work himself, or if he was just a worker, he couldn't have enough salary to provide for himself and for Karl Marx's big family. Friedrich Engels himself had no children. He had a relation with Irish girl whom he eventually married, but after the death of his father, I think, or secretly from his father. This is also very interesting and very Freudian, but let's keep it. But the idea is that Freud sheds light on this conversion of Friedrich Engels, which Marxists themselves cannot explain at all. So something of the personality or of the behavior of a person remains unexplained by Marxism. And I felt it myself very deeply because when I was studying at school, I was a fervent Marxist. And in the age of 14 or 15 years old, I just sincerely believed that Marxist paradigm or Marxist research program can explain everything. Well, the first doubt which I had, and later I found it with Lakatos also, was this conflict between Russia and China. It happened in 1969. Maybe not all of you remember it. 1969. There were clashes on the Soviet-Chinese border near uh, Isle of Damansky on the Amur. Maybe only Lee knows about that because she's from China. Maybe you remember that the relations were very, very tense between Brezhnev and Mao Zedong. But maybe you were not taught this in school. Uh, or maybe Ninkfei can say something about that. Or you don't remember it. But for me, I remember it quite vividly because I was already 11 or 12 years old. So I knew that. And for me, it was a contradiction. Why two socialist countries cannot form mutual friendly relations? Why they are, well, if, say, China was a capitalist country, I could have understood it. Well, of course, capitalism and socialism are antagonistic systems, and of course, there can be clashes and even wars between socialist countries and capitalist countries. For example, thus was explained the war of Nazi Germany with Soviet Union, that Germany was a capitalist country and fascism was a ultra-reactionary capitalism. And so we dismissed this idea that Hitler founded socialist party. We mocked at it and we said it was pseudo-socialist. It was in fact bourgeois party that he formed. You remember this? Hitler's party was called National Socialist Working Party. But we said, no, this was not working party. This was not socialist. It was a fascist party, it was a Nazi party, it was a reactionary party, and it served the ultra aggressive capitalists, imperialists. That's what we were told. But with China, we couldn't say that. We couldn't say that Mao Zedong served the capitalists or say ultra capitalist ideas. We understood that in China there was a ruling communist party formed on the ideas of Marx, Engels, and Lenin, the same as in the Soviet Union, but something went wrong in the relations between China and the Soviet Union. And that created some puzzle for me. But for Freud, of course, it wouldn't create any puzzle because for Freud, Freud was a staunch social Darwinist, and he, of course, understand that there are cultures, states, that there are state interests, that there is collective aggression, and as one man can be aggressive in relations with other men, so in the same way, one state or one nation can be feel the danger from other nation, especially when um, they have some quarrels about the borderline. Okay, so you see, so for Freud, it was nothing unexplainable in this Russian-Chinese conflict, and for us, for Marxists, it was a kind of a stumbling block. And it was very interesting when I read with Lakatos the same ideas that Lakatos said that Marxist program is an example of degenerating research program because for Marxists, every new development in history, like for example the Soviet tanks in Czechoslovakia in August 19 or the suppression of Hungarian uprising in 1956, or say the Berlin Wall, all these say events are difficult for Marxists to explain, and they have to use additional this auxiliary hypothesis to solve these problems which accumulate in a certain way. So while Freud is able to explain almost everything, with Marxists, the situation is difficult. For Marxists, it's more and more difficult to explain the events. Well, but still Marxism as a research program. Why? Because it has its own hardcore. What is the hardcore of Marxism? First of all, is that economic relations are the basis of the society. So if you want to analyze the society, look at its economy, how it is built, who are the owners, who sort of, the world is divided, well, according to Marxists, in two kinds of people: those who hire other people and who are hired. You understand? So even a scientist, he doesn't hire, or for example, myself, I doesn't hire other people to work for me. I don't exploit the labor of my students, for example. Only if I take bribes, but that will be just a transgression of the law, and I will be, if caught, sent to prison or at most immediately expelled from the faculty of Moscow Physical Technical Institute. You understand? So, but it is not also exploitation. It's just mm, uh, just just a criminal activity. It's not exploitation when I ask you to do some job for me and pay you some uh, uh, salary, but your job is worth more than the salary that I give to you, okay? So I have a surplus, okay? I have some gain, which I retain for myself. And that's why I become rich. And you understand, this is the core of the relations between men. Who pays money? Who gives financial assistance? And intelligentsia is not the brain of the society. They are also servants. They are also kind of proletarians in a broad sense, because they are also receive their salary. For example, who can appreciate the validity of my today's lecture? How can it be transferred into just real money? Okay. Well, of course, if you say give, well, you can just appreciate the work of art. For example, you can take the, say, Mona Lisa by Leonardo da Vinci to the auction, Sotheby's, and will say, well, I ask for this Mona Lisa, I ask $10 million, okay? And I think there will be people among the rich oligarchs who would eagerly pay $10 million for Mona Lisa, okay? But how can we can ask, how can one artist produce the, say, uh, produce a product which costs so much? It's also unexplainable for Marxists. Because when, if say, just a simple worker produces a car for other workers on a plant, car plant, who makes cars, then everything is understood. We have a strict, we have a fixed prices for cars, and no car can cost, say, $100 million. It's a classic car, okay? But you can at Sotheby's auction you can find pieces of art which cost $100 million. Okay, there are well, maybe not so often, but what is that? So a single painter can paint write a paint a picture, or yes, and then it will cost the amount of, say, a rocket or some jet plane which is produced by hundreds of workers. So what is this? What is this creativity? How can it be transferred into money? This was also a kind of a mystery for Karl Marx. For example, Copernicus produced heliocentric system. What is the cost of his insight? How it can be, say, explained economically? You understand? Well, Marx tried to explain the same in economic relations. For example, he said that Protestant Reformation was economically motivated, that, say, bourgeoisie needed a cheap church. So Catholic Church was too expensive for bourgeoisie, because the Catholic Church took a lot of amount of money and transferred it to Rome, to the Pope. So it was economically not efficient. That's how Marx explained Protestant Reformation in Europe. Well, that sounds plausible, and many people agree with that. But when it comes to Islam, you cannot explain what happened with Islam in terms of Marxist ideology very easily. Because, for example, in Islam countries, there remained slavery, which, according to Marx, is old-fashioned way of exploitation. So, according to Marx, the Ottoman Empire should have undergo capitalist revolution. Well, something like that happened in the 20th century. Turkey underwent a series of revolutions and crises, and now Turkey is a secular capitalist country. So maybe Marx can sort of sigh, or say that, no, sigh with satisfaction, we say, but he can just say, oof, okay, so the problem with Ottoman Empire is solved. I was true. So slavery is abolished, maybe too late, but still. And now Turkey is a modern developed country, okay? So maybe the same will happen with Nigeria here with Latin America and other countries, which are called developing countries. So here Marx perhaps is right, but he is not right when, for example, he cannot explain the so-called Islamic revolution in Iran, because Marx cannot understand the driving force of religion in revolution, because for Marx, religion is only used by the exploiters to keep obedient the working classes. So they are afraid of the working classes. So of course they have the police and the government, but they also need to give them some illusion of future remuneration in heaven, which will keep them subordinate, you see, and religion will serve the so religion is a tool of the capitalists by which they keep the proletariat in subordinates. But now we have interesting developments in religion. Well, I will take only two examples. The first is the so-called Islamic revolution in Iran, where the religious slogans were the driving force of the revolution, which uh, according to Marx, it shouldn't have taken place, because the Iran under Shah Reza Pahlavi was already a developed capitalist country. So it
Muhammad Reza.
Reza
Muhammad Reza.
yeah.
Muhammad Reza, not Reza. Reza, his father.
Well, I mean,
Reza Pahlavi.
which was dethroned.
Pahlavi had two king.
Ah,
First king is Reza. Sons of him is
well, I
Muhammad.
mean the Islamic revolution in
Actually, Reza Pahlavi, he was from Georgia. His generation from
yes,
Georgia.
I mean that he was acting Shah in Iran in
King. Shah means king.
1978, and Ayatollah Khamenei became the leader of the country
And he
under
was very good
Islamic
guy.
under Islamic slogans. I mean that for Marxists, it was a mystery how religion could be a driving force of the revolution. Well, maybe in the 16th century, Protestantism was a religion which could somehow movements. But with Iran, what was the say Ayatollah Khamenei uh, promoting socialism or
Ayatollah?
capitalism? No, he
What
was
is it?
promoting his own ideology, deeply religious. And if we analyze the psychology of Ayatollah Khamenei, he was a religiously motivated political leader. Sincere, say. He was sincere. You perhaps, but he was sincere. And this cannot be understood
No, he was
by
very stupid person.
huh?
He was
What?
very stupid.
What person?
You say he is like Sir. I
They
said
say
no.
he was very a stupid person.
Stupid? No, you cannot say
At,
so.
at this moment, during the devolution, they felt,
Well,
oh, he's extremely lovely. But right now they understand what's going on.
okay. The problem is to understand what was happening in Iran. Now, the second example is close to Angel Sierra. It is so-called liberation theology, which was developed by Catholic Church. Gutierrez and others, perhaps you know, Leonard Boff. So there were some ideologists among the Catholic priests who developed this idea that Catholicism as a religion must promote socialist revolution in or help against the exploitation of the working classes. So, well, one example is Archbishop Oscar Romero in Nicaragua. Well, if we analyze this figure, what can be his economical motivation? Was he a socialist? Was he a communist? Or was he a capitalist? So from Marxist point of view, his behavior, it cannot be explained. Well, the same with Mother Teresa of Calcutta. So her charitable activity also cannot be explained by, say, from Marxist point of view. Why is she sort of sacrificed all her life to serve the poorest of the poor? Well, Marxists, of course, can say, and I heard the meaning, their explanation, that Mother Teresa was a just ignorant woman which was used by capitalists in order to somehow pacify or mitigate or cure some open social diseases. Okay, for example, sometimes capitalists also do some charity to their workers in order to somehow um, smooth or make it more less painful, this situation. So well, but this charity also always is explained by Marxists in pure egoistical motives. So these charitable people are thinking egoistically. They're thinking about their own interests. So when they promote charity or give some financial assistance to persons like Mother Teresa, they are just want to establish a kind of a class peace between them and the proletarians in order to prevent the revolution. So Marxists are against such measures as charity because they want the proletarians to recognize that they are exploited, and this recognition can come only through suffering, through hard working conditions, through misery. When the proletarian will understand his misery, and when he will become an atheist and will understand that this is an illusion, then he can become a real revolutionary force. So these people like, say, um, Catholic theologians that are fostering liberation theology, or Mother Teresa, or Ayatollah Khamenei, they are in fact enemies of the working people, because the working man, in order to uh, make the socialist revolution, he should be like, first of all, atheistic. Second, he should be proud and not humble. And third, he must be angry, really angry, aggressive. So, sort of, he should hate the capitalists, hatred. This is class hatred. This is important for revolution. Nobody will start a revolution in a peaceful attitude of his mind. For example, I am now in peace, I am giving lecture, I am have an audience, so I don't want revolution. I don't want to go to demonstrations, okay? Because I'm satisfied. I have my own little world, creative activity. So I am not fit to be a good revolutionary. A good revolutionary must be angry, must be just develop hatred, aggression in himself. This is Marxist approach. With Freud would say, well, you are, uh, this is very dangerous. Don't say, well, somehow rise or um, awake this aggression in a man's heart, because this aggression will never cease. And when the workers or the communists will sort of annihilate all their bourgeoisie, they will start to annihilate each others, like it was during the Stalin's purges when communists shot other communists. So there will be struggle between communists themselves. This aggression, which was awoken in a human heart, will always ask for new and new victims. Okay, so it is Freudian idea proved very, very penetrating and wise, because, and Freud, when he heard about Stalin's purges, he was not duped, he was not mistaken, he understood it quite well. This Stalin's purges, this aggression which happened under Stalin was the result of this hatred, which was, how to say, cultivated by the communists. This hatred is very dangerous thing. When you allow hatred, it can lead to very complicated. But still, it we have hatred, but it can be also fueled not only by economic situation, but fueled by fanaticism. You can hate just, I can imagine that adherent of Islam can hate Christians, or I can understand that a Christian can hate another denomination, like Catholic can hate Protestant, or Orthodox can hate Catholics. And also, well, you can imagine all kinds of hatreds, because according to Freud, every human person has this aggression within him. So the ideal of the culture is to pacify a man, to make him educated, to make him sort of uh, mm, like benevolent, empathic, and not aggressive, full of hatred. So Marxism, in this cultivation of hatred, it opened a so-called Pandora's box. Okay, it opened like a certain cage from which comes ghosts and monsters. Okay, so this is a very interesting thing. So, well, this is mainly what I could say about Lakatos. So he understood that these scientific research programs, like, say, Marxism or Freudism, they couldn't be understood in simplistical approach of Popper, that they are just cases of pseudoscience. There are some interesting examples of scientific research programs, and they continue, they persevere. We still have communists, we still have psychoanalysis, and maybe yes. Okay, so thank you, Ali, for explaining me the uh, mm, how to say, the mystery of Iranian Revolution. So I don't know the facts. I only know some general ideas. So I use it as an example of that Marxism cannot explain everything. I didn't want to get into details and injure someone's feelings. So thank you very much for listening to me. And I
Yes, Professor. I mean also this is